Business Brain, episode 558 for Casual Friday, June 14th, National Pop Goes the Weasel Day 2024. Greetings, folks, and welcome to Business Brain, the show where we take an idea or three, we dissect them, we analyze them, we use them to tune our business brains every single episode so that we can each keep living that charmed life. Our sponsor for this episode is linkedin.com/businessbrain. That's where you're going to go to post your first job for free. I know, it's awesome. We'll talk more about LinkedIn jobs and how I've used it in a little bit. For now, here as usual in Durham, New Hampshire, I'm Dave Hamilton.
And out here in sunny California, I'm Shannon Jean. Happy Friday, dude.
Happy National Pop Goes the Weasel Day.
I don't know what that means, but...
I don't either. Well, it's about the game, Pop Goes the Weasel.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good. So I want to apply our business brains to an idea that I had this past weekend about our show. The idea is, could this be a recurring segment on the show? So bear that in mind. And you may help me decide, Dave, that's insane. No way. And I'm fine with that answer. But
all right.
I was with my wife. We wound up picking up a foster puppy on Sunday, and this was on Saturday night when I had this idea. But I knew that we were going to go pick up this puppy. We'd gone and visited it, and it's fine. And she works with this shelter. She works with a couple different shelters, and occasionally we'll foster, nice. until a pet gets adopted. Right. And, they're always like at their, she started telling me, she's like, well, just know that when we go to the shelter tomorrow, it's like, it kind of looks like a dump. Like they don't have a huge budget. I'm like, of course. Like, no, I got that. No problem. But I started thinking, I'm like, here's this thing, because here's us, right? We are fairly financially solvent, let's say.
Yes.
And we're empty nesters. We have room in the house for another dog, but we're like really hesitant to add another dog to the house because every time we travel, it's an added burden
of either dynamic.
It's a whole different thing.
We have two dogs. It's definitely a different dynamic.
Yep. And it's like, I don't know what, but like 98% of the time we'd be totally fine having another dog around. Right. But then there's also there's vet costs and there's this, that, and the other thing. And so I started thinking about the animal shelters and the business model of the animal shelter. And I don't want to say it needs to be fixed, but maybe it can be evolved, because here's all of these people that are involved with the shelter. There's some that actually work there. Then there's this like core of volunteers that donate some amount of their time. And then there's also people that donate money to the shelter. And some of them are also volunteers and some of them not so much. And, there's a whole little, there's a community around each shelter. And the thing is, like, we're people that donate some money, more time than money, generally speaking. And we want to help these dogs, but we don't want to take full responsibility for one of these dogs.
Okay.
And so what if the model was, instead of because right now, if you go and adopt a dog from that shelter or most shelters, they say thank you, but then they kind of also say screw you. They don't feel that way, but that's it's like this is your fault now.
Yeah. Okay.
Right?
You're on your own.
You're on your own. Right. Yeah, exactly. So what if instead of the screw you model, and I realize I'm hyperbolizing a little bit. The shelters don't actually feel that way. They're very thankful that you but instead of that model, what if we had it takes a village model, right? Where there was a community of people, and when you adopt a dog from the shelter, it's still, and I don't know that this is I don't have the full idea here. I just have this concept, and maybe it's when you adopt a dog, you're still part of the shelter community, and so is your dog. And let's say you also were, part of this same shelter community, but the deal is Yep. You adopt this dog. If you need to go on vacation, come to us.
Yeah.
And we'll place it with someone. Now, it might just be that my dog goes to your house, Shannon, right?
Yeah.
You know, and people do this unofficially with
Yes.
like friends and stuff. But I feel like with a shelter at the center being the gravity and the ultimate responsible party for it, that would take the stress off of people. And there would be actually in the end more people being involved because they'd feel comfortable knowing that the shelter was there to have their back, right? And maybe you even pay a little bit like dues or something.
Well,
and
I was thinking, why could the shelter could open a like dog daycare type thing?
They could do that,
they
but
could make some money, and
you wouldn't even need to do that if you had enough people in the
people.
system, right?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, well, I'm going to go away. Okay, great. We'll coordinate that your dog is going to go to Shannon's house or Timmy's house or wherever. Okay, great, no problem. Sometimes, well, we can't go to Shannon's or Timmy's or anybody else's, so it's going to have to be boarded here for the week that you're away. But at least they've got you kind of covered. And the same could be done again with the shelter as sort of the central figure coordinating like large vet bills, things like that.
You want to get in the pet business on this show? Is that what you're doing?
No, what I want to get into is the business of looking at a business model and collect it, because this is just like a starter idea. There's, you know, I just threw out like 10 facets of this idea. I bet 9 of them, if we analyzed them, we'd throw away, right? But like there's something here to evolve this business and actually like help solve the problem that they are solving in an even more robust way. And so is that something we could do here on this show? Maybe, you know, once every 2 weeks, we do 4 segments a week, the 2 segments per episode. And so out of maybe 1 out of every 8 segments, we apply to whatever the, you know, topic do month is or whatever the current topic is.
I like it.
And we bring in some experts. We bring in people from, you know, if we were going to use this model, we'd bring in people from the animal shelter business, get their thoughts on it, because this is going to not land well, you know. But like there are businesses out there, and I think animal shelters are a good example of this, that don't have the they don't have the funds to go and hire
they don't have an
a
advisor
management consultant or an
whatever.
advisor, right? And generally the advisors are like, let's help the dogs. Like that's what the people are focused on, and that's great. But
my take on it would be, it's kind of like our business therapy that we call it. Like where Dave and I, before we connect, we'll wind up talking like half hour, 45 minutes, trying to help each other solve problems that we have. That usually we don't air that stuff, but sometimes we do.
Yes.
But what if we did does your business or do you need some business therapy? And they could email in or send us a DM and we could.
But I feel like we've offered that before.
We have. The question is,
we need to seed the topic. We need to pick the topic and then go tell people where I don't know. I think like that was my thought. Was like, I love this.
I would love if you
I think
could
we
get
need
those,
to force feed people a little bit.
The concept of having people come on to talk about that, that's a challenge in my view of making it, because time-wise, managing the people, doing those things, it's work, right? Not that I don't mind, not that I don't mind working, but the one thing I love about this show is I just kind of walk on and start doing it, right?
Right.
And I love.
But I would love to 10x the audience for this show.
I would
and
too.
I think this might be a path to doing that.
I think it's great.
Because we'll wind up getting PR out of it.
Yes.
I mean, like the goal would be to help a business model, right?
Yes.
You know, or a specific business, but hopefully something that the people listening could then apply to their similar, you know, business or whatever. So I don't know. I
think it's a great idea. We have to let's fine tune it.
Yes, of course,
and come up with it. But I love that. I love trying new things, keeping things fresh. I think it's awesome. Let's figure it out.
All right, folks. When you're running a small business, finding the right people is key, right? That's why I love our sponsor, LinkedIn Jobs. Over the years, I've hired some amazing folks through LinkedIn, including Sadie, our social media and promotions ninja. LinkedIn Jobs isn't just a job board, it's a treasure trove of talent. They help you find professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively hunting but are open to the perfect role. Fun fact, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not using LinkedIn, you're missing out. Here's the kicker. 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours on LinkedIn. That's hiring like a pro. Plus, LinkedIn knows we're all juggling a million things, so they keep making the process easier. They even have a new feature to help you write job descriptions faster. So if you want to hire top-notch professionals without the hassle, check out LinkedIn Jobs. Your next star employee is just a click away. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/businessbrain. That's linkedin.com/businessbrain to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. And our thanks to LinkedIn Jobs for sponsoring this episode. So, Shannon, we talked last episode on Wednesday about, managing our egos and that sort of thing. And I've been thinking lately about a moment in time that crystallized for me when my ego saved me from itself, really.
Okay.
Is where it was. I was on stage at Mac Tech, which it hasn't happened since COVID lockdowns. I'm not sure what the status of its future is or anything.
Yep.
But it was a conference for people using Apple products mainly in business and the enterprise.
Okay.
It was right, like
not consumer like Macworld was or whatever.
Yeah, not consumer like Macworld. Like it was very technically focused. There certainly were a lot of people there that were, that used like Apple computers or computers in general at home, but they also were managing computers either for, there were a lot of lone wolf style consultants there that managed,
sure,
hundreds of people's computers a year or whatever. And some who had built businesses with multiple people around that concept, but then also like the person at a university who managed the whole tech department, those kinds of people would go. Okay.
Sure. Okay.
Right. So one year I was invited to do a session, which was was great. And I did a session on Synology, the network storage devices.
Yeah.
Yep. And so I put together a session. I had given it a similar version of it at another conference, and it's always a good idea to find ways to reuse your sessions, A, because you don't have to write them from scratch, and B,
let me just say, you were explaining what a network storage device is and how to use it, basically?
And how to use it. Like going into some very specific use cases of how to use this thing. I mean, I did explain what it was.
Yeah.
I didn't really have to for that particular crowd. It was intermediate to advanced at that point. But I certainly did explain what it was for anybody that didn't know. And then it was like, all right, here's how you would do it to like run your own Google Docs thing so that you're not storing your data with Google. You get to do it here, private cloud, all that stuff. Right, exactly.
Awesome. Okay.
How to manage your backups on it, like all those things. And so it was a session I'd given before. I was very confident with the timing of it, all of those things. Like I hit the stage in great shape. And then, and I always tell people at sessions, I say, hey, look, I want this to be interactive. So please, if something comes up, raise your hand. I will get to you and we'll address your question in line. And I always make a little joke like, however, I reserve the right to change my mind on this if you folks get out of hand. Because I got to be in charge, right?
Yeah.
Like, you got to get through to the end. And that was actually another lesson I learned at a different presentation.
I like it.
But so I start going, hand comes up, I get to a point with like, yes, your question. And it wasn't a question. It was a comment adding more detail to what I had just talked about. And it was stuff
that's challenging.
I didn't know. And in that moment, but it was valuable and it was well articulated. It wasn't like this person wanted to just bloviate and be the speaker.
Great. He was trying to add value to what you had said.
Absolutely.
That's cool.
And succeeded at it. However, it was the first time I'd really experienced that when I realized, wait a minute, there's no way in the world that I am the smartest person about sonology in this room. I knew I wasn't the smartest person in general in the room, but when you're on stage, you're the expert about a certain thing. That's at least the mindset.
That's
most
why you're
people,
there, right?
That's why you're there.
Yeah,
yep.
I've been there. Yeah,
and it was, and I had to in that moment. It was a blow to my ego, of course, like realizing this, and this was like a split second where all of these thoughts that I'm going to take 4 minutes to explain, sort of processed. It was like, wait, holy crap, okay. That person really should be the one up here giving this, but they're not.
No.
I'm the one up here giving this. So we all know right now that this person knows more than me about at least this aspect of how the sonology systems work. There's zero question in my mind, and I have to assume everybody else sees it too, because they're all smart people, and so why wouldn't they? And I thought, that's okay. Because my job is being the MC here. I am guiding us through this. I know that there's a path to take us through that will get the majority of people in the room what they were promised when they came in, because I wrote the session description. Right?
Yeah, that's nice.
And so it was at that point that, like I said, my ego saved me from itself. It was a huge blow to realize, wait a minute, like, I might have already said something that was wrong, and this person knows it, and changing from being like, wait, that's okay. This is great. In fact, as long as I can manage them well, we can make this a very interactive conversation, perhaps more interactive than I had intended, and get the right information out for everyone in the room. But I got to be the one holding the reins.
Yes.
And that's the only thing that I need to do.
It's
the
a great
rest
framework,
of it,
man.
Right? But I did not walk on stage ever having even thought about that. And it was this, I don't know how long it would have taken me to think of that if it weren't an emergency moment.
Like where you had to make a decision.
Oh, crap.
Yeah, that's tough.
Because I need to figure out a way to get through the next 35
it's like dealing
minutes.
with a heckler, right? How do you spin
right.
it?
But they weren't a heckler, to be clear.
Correct.
Yeah.
But thankfully. But yeah, that framework is powerful in so many different areas. I would say it's just like us doing this podcast.
Oh, I use it all the time.
Yeah.
And it came up. I mean, this was 10 years ago that this happened for me, probably longer. And it has become so much a part of how I present information, how I am on stage, that it's rare that I even think about that moment, although that moment is crystallized in my memory. I will never forget what it felt like in that, all of it. But it was just I've adopted it as part of the way to do things, because it's for me, it's a good way to do things.
Yep. I absolutely. And I think that, I sitting here listening to you and applying it to kind of where I'm at. If you even posting on social media as something where you're oftentimes to get attention, you have to make a definitive statement, right?
Yes.
Even to the point where maybe it's a little bit of hyperbole and then you're walking it back. Well, there's all kinds of people that come into the comments that are, quote, experts in this and probably do know more than you. But if they make a comment or a question or a contradiction in a decent manner, let's say, you can lean into that and go, dude, that's so great. Or hey,
thank you. Yep.
Yeah. Be positive. And I think it's terrific because it is adding that, we're all trying to learn here.
Well, that's it.
It's great. I love that idea.
My Mac Geek Gab podcast, we say at the beginning of every episode, we organize things into an agenda so that we can each learn 5 new things every single time we get together. You can hear it rolls off my tongue. I've said it, hundreds of times. And I have to think that moment at MacStock at Mac Tech. MacStock is a show that's coming up soon. That moment at Mac Tech might have been part of that sort of redefinition of or evolution of that
stood out
show.
For you,
because it's like, well, wait, we're all just here to learn. And guess what? If I show you, my audience, that I am just as willing to learn as I am asking you to be, I'm now modeling the behavior I want from you. And we all can learn together. And it's not manipulative in a Machiavellian way. I mean, it's sincere. Like, I have to actually model that behavior, not fake it, right?
Yeah, that's great. I commend you for, I mean, obviously that crystallized at that moment.
Yeah.
And because it could have gone the exact opposite, where you got defensive.
And sweating and
right. I can totally see it.
And, it could have gone south, man. Yep.
Yeah. And that's the challenge sometimes, when you're speaking in front of people and whether you're sitting on a panel or hosting it in your case, that is the way to go, where you got to manage that ego in the sense that, hey, I'm here because I've been asked to be here. So I have some kind of credibility and experience or authority, let's say.
Yep.
But if you can then, adjust things to where you're open to these different ideas, and not just that I'm here to teach, you're going to listen to me, right? It's, hey, we're going to talk about this topic. I'm going to share what I know, but you never know. We may get somebody out. And you could even say that at the beginning. You say, I'm hoping there's people in the audience that know even more than I do about this. And then
that's fair.
It kind of
you got to be careful.
Things.
You got to know your audience.
Correct.
But that's okay. Yeah.
Or ensure, like I always say, people always talk, it's like, oh, you've achieved all these things, whatever. And I said, I just sound smarter because I'm telling my story in reverse. And it's not that I know anything. These guys are in their 30s. I said, you guys are killing it. And by the time you get to my age, you're going to be, probably way farther than I am.
Yep.
So you're trying to connect and not, you want to have some authority so you have credibility, but you also want to be a decent human being. So that's a great story.
Exactly.
And, thank you for sharing it. I think it's terrific.
No, it was a pivotal moment for me, for sure.
Sounds like it.
Yeah. And it has paid dividends for a decade. And I forget about it because, again, I don't forget about it. I just don't think about sharing it because it's so obvious to me now.
It's part of who you are.
It's part of who I am. Yeah, it totally is. Yeah, absolutely.
That's great. Have a great weekend, everybody. Thanks for
folks.
Listening, watching the stream, all that great stuff. We appreciate your support.
Yeah, feedback at businessbrain.show. Share your ideas. Share your thoughts on our initial conversation, too, about our codifying of business therapy. And thanks. Keep living that charmed life. See you next week.